We come into emergency services in whatever capacity, as a dispatcher, as an EMT, firefighter, police officer. Nobody tells us what the real cost is. Now, that's really the essence of peer support. It's somebody who's been there and done that. Somebody who's seen the things that another EMT or firefighter or police officer has seen. You can't talk about taking care of our own and not do it. You can't talk about taking care of our own and know that one of ours is hurting. I believe in CISM because it's the CISM model that I use is the model that saved my life. I'd rather somebody be mad at me for the rest of their life than have to live the rest of mine knowing that I could have or should have said something and they took another turn.
Welcome to Responder Resilience, along with my co-host, Bonnie Rumley, LCSW, EMT. I'm David Dashinger. In this episode, we'll be speaking with fire service veteran and coordinator of the Westchester-Putnam peer support team, Paul V. Jockimo, about first responder stress and peer support awareness. I invite you to like and subscribe. Our YouTube channel is Responder Resilience. We're on Facebook, Responder Wellness Inc., and Responder TV, bbsradio.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our website with past episodes and guest info is respondertv.com. We'll be right back to speak with Paul after this.
In this family, more of us die by our own hands than by the hazards of the job. In this family, up to a quarter of 911 dispatchers have symptoms of PTSD. In this family, our mental health and wellness are in crisis, while responders are quietly suffering. In this family, many struggle with job-related stress, burnout, trauma, sleep disruption, substance abuse, and marriage problems. In this family, we can help the helpers with vital information and resources, resilient strategies, and success stories of overcoming the obstacles. In this family, no one is alone. Welcome to Responder Resilience with co-hosts retired Lieutenant David Dashinger, Dr. Stacy Raymond, and Bonnie Rumley, LCSW EMTB.
And today we're joined by Paul V. Jockimo, who is a veteran of over 35 years in the fire service. Formerly with the New York City Fire Department, FDNY, he currently serves with the Westchester County, New York Department of Emergency Services. A shout out to our home team here. In addition, Paul is the coordinator of the Westchester-Putnam peer support team and served as the chief of the Somers, New York Fire District. With 28 years of CISM peer support and line of duty death experience, he's had the honor of working with scores of agencies throughout North America. The subject of Bernard Wolf's groundbreaking 1974 book, Don't Feel Sorry for Paul, he brings his unique life experience and humor to all he does. He's been profiled in the books American Firefighter and Duty, Honor, Hope, Strategies for Understanding and Unpacking First Responder Grief. Paul, a warm welcome to Responder Resilience.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
It's an honor to have you, Paul, with all of your experience. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for all you do.
So we like to dive right in just because we're all first responders, right?
Sure.
Talk to us a little bit about why you became a firefighter and how that came about. I know it's been a long time, but we'd love to hear the beginning of your life.
I mean, it's been a journey, and some of it's been good and a lot of it's been not good, but it's the journey that's laid out in front of us. And part of my journey was that physically I was born different than most, right? With two fingers and one toe. And so I had, I guess, challenges that other people maybe didn't have. And I had some great family and mentors in my life, and my godfather, Freddie, was certainly a big part of that. And he was a volunteer in the town I grew up in. And he taught me from a very young age to help people is the right thing to do. It's very simple. If the lady next door fell and hurt her hip, or her water pipe burst, or her house is on fire, if you can help, you go help. And I remember at a very young age, watching him, run off and go help people, whatever the emergency was. And that's just what I always wanted to do. I had surgery on my hand at New York University, NYU, down on 34th and 1st in Manhattan when I was 4 years old. And I remember vividly looking out the window of my hospital room one night, watching a fire truck go up First Avenue. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. Now, of course, the experts, the doctors said, no, cowboy, that's not in your future. With your physical makeup, you're not going to be able to do that. That may as well have been a prescription to say, go do it. You know, and thank goodness that the people around me, my occupational therapist, my physical therapist, my mom, who was my biggest fan, you know, they didn't get that memo. They just said, go get it, go get the world. And if that's what you want to do, you go do it. The problem is we come into emergency services in whatever capacity, as a dispatcher, as an EMT, firefighter, police officer. Nobody tells us what the real cost is. You know, we think of the shiny trucks, right? You think of the quote unquote heroics, the high profile stuff, you know, and I've been blessed to have done those things. I've been decorated more than a Christmas tree, and I'm blessed and I'm honored, but they don't tell you about the bad stuff and the stuff that hurts on the inside. You know, if we throw out a shoulder or a knee while we're doing our thing, everybody revolves around us and says, listen, we're going to take care of you. You know, take your time, get better. But sometimes those wounds are on the inside. And so I learned very early into my career, about a month into my service as a volunteer at 17, a month after my 17th birthday, I responded to a fatal accident where there was a decapitation. And what do you do with a new kid? You stick them out the door, right? You know, they're not operating the tools, but come here, kid, look what this is. And there's the head on one side of the car and the body on the other. And I was 17 years old, man. I didn't know what to do with that. But I knew I wasn't going to go talk to somebody about that. I wasn't going to go to my company officer and say, hey, by the way, that messed me up. I was new, had a lot to prove, and I probably had more to prove than other people. So you push it down. And then you have another call, and you push that one down, and another call. You push a spring down enough, man, it's going to come up eventually. You know, for me, I wasn't taught good, positive coping skills because back then we didn't talk about that stuff. What I was taught at a young age, unfortunately, was alcohol. You know, I didn't know at the time that alcohol was a coping mechanism, but that's what I did, and that's what I did for a decade. You know, thank God, at 23 I got sober, and you know, it's not a badge that I wear, but at the same time, I know that many first responders, many of our military personnel, they struggle with that. You know, it can be a coping mechanism. Listen, I don't have an issue with after one of those bad calls or a bad day, you go home and have a drink. I have no issue with that. But when that drink becomes 4 or 5 or 6, when it's impacting the family and your work, then that becomes a different issue. But my own anonymity, I do break because I can't be of service to people if they don't know. And that's no different than my PTSD or other things that I've been through. You know, that's really the essence of peer support. It's somebody who's been there and done that. Somebody who's seen the things that another EMT or firefighter or police officer has seen. Man, I'm nobody special. I'm just a guy who's been through the ringer like we all have. Who's been lucky enough to intersect with people along the way who have taught me. And some have taught me good and some have taught me not so good. You know, and you have to kind of separate those two.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and we would love to circle back to the piece about peer support and, you know, how you pay forward what you've learned in your career.
When you retire, you're just another employee that's gone. In 10 years, you'll be, oh yeah, that's good old what's his name.
And sometimes I think for a lot of us, it's scary to retire when you've been raised by an organization for almost 3 decades.
There's a running joke that says that as you retire, you're forgotten about before you even leave the parking lot.
It wasn't that I was losing the passion for the job. I decided I want to go ahead and transition and start traveling and talking to groups of people.
I lost who I was. I didn't have any plans for the future. I sunk.
And we're always saving for a rainy day. And what ends up happening is you die and you never receive the benefit of you working so hard for so long.
It's as if you've lost a loved one. For me, there's a sadness there.
They really do become your second family.
I was a firefighter. That was always what I wanted to do. Sometimes life throws you a curveball and you find yourself without an identity.
I would pass police cars and it was like somebody punched me in the stomach. Like I got sick because I missed it so bad.
When you say I'm a retired firefighter, people, they notice. And they're like, wow, man, that's incredible. And it provides an avenue for you to be impactful.
You have an amazing collection of challenge coins behind you. We talked a little bit offline about those. And can you share with us kind of like the story behind those coins? Why are they important and where do they come from?
Well, the challenge coins are from all over North America. And I mean, they're my treasures. I mean, they're what I have done on the road for 27, 28 years doing this peer support work. You know, on June 22nd, 97, I lived through a fire that took the life of my lieutenant. Mm-hmm. And that kind of began my entrance into doing line of duty death work, you know, and putting those things together in a very short period of time and what impact that has on the agencies and the families, not just that week, but for sometimes for years after. And so between my line of duty death work, between doing suicide and PTSD work, peer support work, some of the gifts, right? And I get the patches, the hats, the pins, and I love all that stuff because those are the personal connections. But the round metal objects, the RMOs, the challenge coins, are very personal because they almost always go with a handshake and a hug, and sometimes from people that aren't normally huggers. I'm a hugger, right? But they're very personal. You know, I don't collect coins, so that's not a collection. That's a wall of really horrible events. That's a wall full of people that I wish I had never met because if bad things didn't happen, I wouldn't have met those folks. They give them to me as a thank you, but it's really thanking them and thanking those that have gone on, and whatever way that is. I had a coin there given to me by the mom of a senior airman killed in Afghanistan. 23rd of March of 03. You couldn't pay me enough for that coin, right? That's his coin. Every one of those coins has that same personal meaning. You know, when I was putting the coins up on that wall, I'm going through those events for those folks. I'm going through those places where those people gave me those coins. Some of those coins were given to me at graveside. Some were given to me at ground zero. You know, those are just, I guess those are part of the legacy. Those are part of the journey.
Can you talk a little bit about when you look at those coins and walk through the events, how that makes you feel and how do you handle that?
I mean, you know, even though the challenge coins have been around for many, many years, certainly in the fire service and law enforcement, you know, we're kind of new to it relative to the military, who really has been using these for you know, many, many years further than us. I'm proud because those, to me at least, represent things that 30, 40 years ago we'd not have talked about. You know, I designed a challenge coin for PTSD that's on that wall, and was out here in town a few years back and ran into somebody who had been in the military special ops, and I could tell from the shirt that he was wearing, and we just struck up a conversation, and he had been overseas in a very unpopular war, and I had one of the coins with me, and I gave it to him and said, you know, welcome home and thank you, and I wish I had something more to give you. And his eyes kind of welled up, and he looked at the PTSD coin, and he said, this is why I got out of the military. He said, but I couldn't say it back then. It's a thank you. You know, and the coins are representative of how far we've come in peer support, in truly taking care of our own, even though we've talked about it for a couple hundred years. It's the past 20, 30 years we've really kicked it into high gear, and the past 5 or 10 years even more so. You can't talk about taking care of our own and not do it. You can't talk about taking care of our own and know that one of ours is hurting and not do something about it. And that's what those coins represent to me. You know, it's the coin, it's the person. It's just part of the journey.
Thank you for that. Because those of us who are in first responder world, we know what the coins mean, but it's very, very nice to hear how poignantly you were able to describe that and the feelings. And the word that keeps coming up for me as you're speaking is honor. You are a very honorable man, and everyone you've helped, I'm grateful to see, and I know that you did it for the right reasons.
I thank you, but I'm just trying to give back. You know, when I was a little kid, the people who taught me to do what we do, right? The people who encouraged me to do what we do, they didn't have to. You know, the people who went into the line of work to become occupational therapists and physical therapists to help kids like me. The people went into the fire service and law enforcement to help others. They didn't have to. Right. Those who go into mental health, you know, the dedication, the training, the education that it takes to go into our vocations. Most of us could be working on Wall Street, making far more money than we are in serving other people. But we go into to help people. And that's what it is for me. I'm just trying to give back a fraction of that which was given to me. And that then becomes peer support. How do we not?
Right.
Right. So much meaning and purpose in being of service that way. So I just love your perspective on it, Paul, and the fact that, you know, it is just a flow, right, of receiving and giving from you know, people that came before us and the people that are, you know, maybe following in our footsteps in emergency services. So very inspiring, and I'd love for you to just give us a little perspective on the difference between peer support and CISM. Like how do you see it? How do you deliver it? What does it look like in your world?
I don't know if there really is a difference. That question has been posed how many times in the past number of years, and I don't really see a difference only in the sense that, you know, CISM, and there are a lot of things out there, you know, I want to say on the market, and not in a business sense, but there are a lot of things out there, you know, now, a lot of different models and methods, and quite honestly, I don't care which one you use, as long as we're helping people. So I think, you know, CISM as I use it, and again, you know, I believe in CISM because it's the CISM model that I use is the model that saved my life. It's the model that I've seen have a positive impact on probably thousands of people in the past 20 years that I've been doing this alone. So the proof is in the pudding. That's the model. That is the model for doing one-on-one support and interventions. That's a model for doing debriefings or diffusings or crisis management briefings. It's that CISM toolbox, that multitude of things that we can use to assist the person, the agency, given the event. Peer support is maybe a broader brushstroke of helping folks. You know, we think about that high impact event, which we all understand. When an agency goes through that high impact event, whatever that may be, that could leave a mark. Let's provide some support to them. We tend not to think so much, although it certainly happens on a much more frequent basis, of that cumulative effect, right? The agency or the individual who's been through a number of things, maybe not as high impact as the others, but maybe you have an agency who have lost 3 members to cancer in the past 6 months. Don't tell me that doesn't take a toll. The person who's been on multiple fatalities in the past 3 or 4 months, but yet at shift end turns it off and goes back home. How do you make that transition? Don't tell me you're not absorbing that. So I think in peer support, it's a broader brush stroke that we reach out more. We have to be more understanding of our people, not just the work stuff, but any one of us. If you go and talk to somebody, and I don't care if it's career, volunteer, law enforcement, military, fire service, communications, healthcare setting, you talk to any one of us. Somebody has somebody they work with who has some sort of addiction issue, whether it's alcohol, substance, food, you name it. You have somebody in that agency who's going through a divorce, who's going through issue with their kids, who's going through financial difficulties. We're not necessarily financial planners. We're not addictions counselors. Most of us are not mental health providers. But a lot of us are folks who have been through that stuff before. And so I think the essence of peer support is putting your hand on somebody's shoulder and saying, what's going on? And I've been there. You know, the story of the firefighter, and again, you can use whatever location you want, but the firefighter who falls into a ditch, right? And along comes a doctor and says, "Hey, doc, hey, can you help me out? I'm in this ditch." And the doc writes a prescription and throws it down and says, "Hey, man, if you get out of here, here's a prescription that'll help you out." He continues on his way. And along comes a chaplain. The firefighter says, "Hey, chaplain, hey, man, listen, I fell down this ditch, and can you help me? I can't get out of here." The chaplain prays over him for a minute and says, "Hey, you know, now you're going to be good," and goes about his way. A little while later, another firefighter comes along. He says, "Hey, man, hey, I fell down this ditch. I can't get out of here." The firefighter jumps down the ditch with him. He says, "Man, what are you doing?" He goes, "Now we're both stuck down here." He says, "No, man," he goes, "I've been down here before, but I know the way out." And that's what peer support is. Right? It's just folks who have been through it, and some have fared well and some haven't. We got to do a better job of taking care of ourselves, not just talking about it.
I love that description, and if you don't mind, I'd love to use it in the future.
Sure. I stole it from somebody in North Carolina, so feel free.
Come on.
Check it.
Come on, let's go. My heart went boom.
For our listeners or viewers, if they are thinking or they're on the fence about getting involved with peer support or getting trained in CISM, do you have some advice to them or some beginner's tips on what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, you know, I say this to almost all of my classes that I teach. You know, you can come through, whether it's 2 or 3 or 5 days of training for peer support, CISM, and whatever model it may be, doesn't matter. And you may say, "Hey, you know what, cool stuff, but not really for me. I don't have the right makeup, or I couldn't do that." And that's fine. That is absolutely fine. But if you come out of that with a better awareness of the stress in your life, be it work or home, and by the way, one meets the other, right? The locker room meets the living room, right? Absolutely. So if you come out of that with a better awareness of the stress and what it looks like, talks like, smells like, and what to do about it, some of those stress reduction mitigation techniques, then not just you're better off, but everybody around you is better off, right? So what we have to be doing a better job. And even though we're doing a better job than we were years ago, we have to be doing a better job at educating all of our folks. There is no reason whatsoever that every first responder, every healthcare professional, every one of our military members does not have a good awareness level training of basic stress management, stress reduction, stress recognition, right? Stress resources. Those are the 4 R's I talk about, right? And what to do about those things. My goodness, we train our folks for everything else. We train ourselves for things that really don't happen all that often. We need to be prepared for those. We need to be prepared for hostage negotiation, for high angle rescue, right? For confined space, right? Those low frequency, high risk events, as Gordon Graham would talk about. We have to do a whole lot better job of teaching about things that happen to us every single day. And if they don't happen at work, they happen at home, and vice versa. So, you know, if somebody has the opportunity to get involved or at least take a peer support class, CISM class, doesn't matter, please do it. If you're somebody in a position of leadership, be a training officer or somebody of rank, and you have the ability to bring in somebody or provide yourself some sort of peer support awareness training, CISM training, stress management, absolutely, please do so. Please do so. I'm asking on behalf of the folks who need it. We have to be doing that.
You know, what's encouraging to me as a professional is just right over the border here, I'm part of the Fairfield County Trauma Response Team, as is Stacy, and David is on our advisory committee. I am pleased to say, and I'm very encouraged to say, that just about every week we're doing a debriefing somewhere in the state. So people are listening, their ears are open, their minds are more open than ever, and we're all part of this change. And we know these events occur every day. You know, just turn on the news, read the news feed every day. But I feel very hopeful at the amount of help that people are asking for and the amount of support that our team, your team, everyone's efforts, and the amount of support we're providing is validating that we're doing the right work and that it's needed and people are finally ready to receive it.
Yeah, we've come such a long way. I remember, you know, when I first got involved in this, or even when I first went on the job, which was 31 plus years ago, you know, you wouldn't talk about this stuff. You certainly would not talk about PTSD. You wouldn't, you know, and you wouldn't go somewhere that wasn't your business. And I talk about this all the time now. You know, if you have somebody that's struggling, but you don't want to approach them because, well, it's not your business, or you don't want to offend them. You don't want to make them mad at you. I'd rather somebody be mad at me for the rest of their life than have to live the rest of mine knowing that I could have or should have said something and they took another turn. Worse. We talk about things now that we never would have talked about before. There literally are billboards on some of our highways for PTSD assistance. 24-hour number, please call. Like, you know, it's on TV. I've had people over the years who have said, well, I don't do that peer support stuff. I don't believe in that. Stress is an inherent part of what we do. If you can't handle it, you shouldn't be doing what we do. And that's that old school mentality, and you see less of it. I had a police chief who very publicly was against the peer support process, but yet at the same time was very staunch in his support and his involvement in a cancer support network. You gotta walk that walk and not just talk it, right? It's the same thing. You watch TV on any given day. How many things are on TV that are peer support? I mean, forget about our 12-step processes, but smoking cessation, a lot of our weight loss stuff. It's somebody who's been there and done it who can kind of coach you along. So it's no different, you know, and the resources that we have available to us are tremendous in all branches of our military, in all aspects of our emergency services. You don't go to a first responder type conference these days, whatever vocation it may be, without there being at least one program on stress, peer support, PTSD, resilience. Have we come a long way? My God, absolutely. But do we have a long way to go? You know, we had 4 first responder suicides in the second half of last year here in my county alone. While we've made progress, while we continue to make progress, you know, one is too many. So, you know, and that's one thing that I know a lot of us, and David, you're, you know, you signed on the dotted line, you've served your time, and, you know, you're on the easy side now of kind of having done your career in, and I'm working towards that soon, I hope. But a lot of us who are involved in peer support, just because we retire out doesn't mean we get, you know, uninvolved in peer support. A lot of us couldn't get out of it if we wanted to, because it becomes ingrained in what we do. It becomes in what we do. I certainly do it every single day in one capacity or another. And it's that essence of just helping other folks. It's not always convenient. It's not always fun, but having that resource, having a resource of mental health providers just over the border from us, aside from just the ones that I have here in my county and the ones that I have in Texas and in Florida and Washington. The group I'll be with in South Carolina next week teaching. I have about 70 folks who are peer support, mental health, military. I know that I can tap on them, on their shoulders, to provide assistance to somebody up here and vice versa. So for somebody who's the old timer in this stuff now, right? Where when when an agency was having a debriefing because they had a bad call, and it was almost like an anonymous fellowship. It was almost like Agency A is having a debriefing, don't tell anybody. It was like very hush-hush. Newsflash, everybody knows you had a bad call. Nobody really cares that you're getting some assistance. And it's been hard fought, right? To get that recognition, to get that acceptance. There is no reason any of our folks, our brothers and sisters, suffer alone these days. There's no, there are two things that literally kill our people. And I don't care what vocation it is, but the fallacy of abnormality and the fallacy of uniqueness. That there's something wrong with me because I went home and I couldn't sleep. There's something wrong with me because I was physically ill after going through that call. There was something wrong with me because I'm thinking about this call 3 days, 4 days later. And I must be the only one. Because nobody else is thinking what I am. Nobody else is feeling what I am. And those two things are huge dangers for us, because that's when things go really sour for us. And that's why I think the whole essence of peer support, of CISM, coming together either as an individual, two people talking one-on-one, or as a group, those fallacies of abnormality and uniqueness are dispelled.
Well, if you think about our basic chemistry as human beings, we're hardwired for connection. We're hardwired. I don't know if you read Sebastian Unger's book, Tribe. It's a wonderful, fairly short book, but talks all about all of our needs to be part of a tribe. And so when I think of peer support and I think of supporting each other in this kind of way, it makes so much sense, because we need to be part of a tribe. We're not built to be alone. And I think that's why when people feel alone, that's when bad things happen. That's when the suicide happens. That's when the substance abuse spirals. So we, in our fields, I'm putting my EMT hat on right now, but we need to remember that we all need a tribe. And if there's someone that you see who's deviating from that, pulling away from that, withdrawing from that, that's when you need to be concerned. And we're all doing our work to prevent that, right? And to do damage control when it's happening. But if we could all remember the fact that we all need to be part of a tribe, and watch your people, watch your friends. And more often than not, people do exhibit symptoms. Mm-hmm. It's just that fear that you mentioned before of, I don't know if I should say something. I don't want them to be pissed off at me. There's a lot of reasons that people don't. And there's a lot of people that come to therapy in our office after that with guilt. And I don't want to see anyone harboring guilt for the events or for any of the feelings.
And we know our tribe better than anybody else, right? We know our people. So we know when the usual behavior is not now usual. We know when somebody is not themselves. So again, we have to get out of our comfort level and take that action, and it's amazing, because I learned a lot of what I learned as a firefighter from the folks who had served in the Bronx and Harlem in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and you'd sit around. Every firehouse does this. You sit around a coffee table, or you sit around the dispatch center or the nursing station, and we talk about in our little bit of downtime. We talk about our relationships, and we all offer advice, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. We offer financial advice. If somebody comes in and says, "Oh, my roof is leaking," everybody there has a different option and opinion as to what you should do about your leaking roof, right? We become amateur financial planners, We trade recipes, right? I mean, I have seen people. I witnessed two people get into a fist fight over how to make a drink, a carbonated drink. It was like it was amazing because there were two families had it was a egg cream. It was two guys who literally got into an altercation over the right way to make an egg cream because each of their families had been making these egg creams for many years. But yet we don't talk about the stuff we really have to because we don't want to offend them. You know, if one of our folks hurt their knee on a call and they said, hey, you know, man, I think I screwed up my knee on that call. Everybody would have an opinion about what you do, right? You ice it and elevate it. You heat it and work it, you know. Somebody's going to tell you to take, you know, Advil. Somebody's going to say, take something else. Everybody's got an opinion on that. Some are good, some are not. But now 3 or 4 days later, it's swollen and you can't move it. Now somebody's going to say, hey, you know, maybe you should go see somebody about it. You know, go talk to my doctor because they helped me out. How is it any different when we get hurt in our minds or in our hearts? How is that? But we have to keep that secret? It's no different. It's no different. Again, we have to stop talking the talk. We have to start walking the walk.
Yeah, I would love to channel this a little bit into something that I've heard you speak to. It was at a convention a few months back about firefighter marriage. And unfortunately, the attendance was, suboptimal. It just didn't draw people the way the strategy and tactics and collapsing buildings and air management, whatever does. But your opening remarks, I thought, were profound. Could you speak to the family a little bit and why that's so important?
Well, I mean, to me, it's pretty much a no-brainer. Our family's in this with us. You know, I mean, listen, I'm divorced. You know, I have been remarried now for almost a year, and I can, without saying, I mean, she's my best friend. She's somebody that I can talk to about the good and the bad. I think when we can't do that, that's a problem for us, you know. But we can't forget about our family at home. When the bad stuff happens at work, we go home with that stuff. You know, I have dealt with police officers who had a bad call on Christmas Eve and went home the next morning and took down the Christmas tree. Because how can you have Christmas when you've been through such a horrible event? Well, how do you explain that to your little kids at home? You know, how do you explain when mom or dad comes home from a bad call and, you know, they're normally this mountain, right? This public servant who now is crying. It doesn't happen all the time. But this stuff takes a toll on us. And so that toll goes home, right? The locker room meets the living room. I think you've got to have those, whether it's those code words or the ability just to talk with somebody at home. I mean, the question always comes up is how much do I tell my family? How much do I tell my significant other? I don't want to infect them, right? I don't want them to see it and smell it and hear it, the things that we had at work. But at the same time, I don't want to shut them out. Mm-hmm. So I'm blessed that I can talk to my wife about some of the good and some of the bad. You know, I don't want her to see and hear some of the horrible graphic stuff, but to be able to kind of vent a little bit, you know, that stress mechanism, right? To be able to kind of go home and process. We talk about in CISM, we talk about, you know, cognitive reframing and reevaluation, looking at something from a different perspective, and cathartic ventilation. And so why would you not do that with somebody that you trust, somebody that you love, you know, somebody that for whatever reason loves us for who and what we are? You know, they know what they're going into with this. So for them to say, well, I didn't see it, I didn't smell it, I didn't hear it, but here's what I see in you. Hey, let's go for a walk. Hey, why don't you go to the gym? Or, hey, maybe you need some time. I'm going to go to the store. You know, I just, you know, I've heard for many years, right? I've heard people in our vocation say, the job cost me my marriage. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Maybe the stress of the job. and not knowing what to do about that. Maybe becoming so hurt by some of the things that we see on the job, and by suppressing them, by keeping them inside. Because if you become that clam and just stay shut up, it's going to have that effect at home. So maybe that did it. The job itself didn't do it, but the byproducts of the job. And if nobody reached out to you, if the job didn't provide peer support, CISM, stress awareness training, let alone the services, then, shame on us. Shame on us. We see people going through bad stuff at work and home. We have to take the action. We also see people doing stuff, whether it's off duty, that maybe isn't our business. And we all know that stuff, right? We all know the stuff that's going on, what I call the functional dysfunctionalism, right? The stuff that people probably shouldn't be doing, but yet they come in, they do their thing when they're at work. Again, whether it's career volunteer, right? But it's not our business because it's not in the firehouse with us. It's not in the comm center. It's not at the hospital. It's not in the police station. It's not our business until it becomes our business, right? Until that person now gets jammed up with something, until that person now has a detrimental effect, something going on negatively, and now it comes to work. It's there already, right. So maybe we should, as the old timers, maybe some of us should be grabbing those younger folks by the back of the neck saying, hey, straighten up and fly right. Maybe we should be grabbing them by the back of the neck and saying, listen, I've been where you are with this event that you went through, man. Let's talk about it. I think that some of the younger folks, I know it's not just the younger folks, but I think that more of our people need to be able to feel comfortable with us talking about the bad calls, the bad times, the bad situations, home and work. Mm-hmm. If we can help one person live a little bit better, that's what we should be doing, And I think I get it that some of us don't have that relationship at home, For years, when I had a dog, I would talk to my dog. Now, he didn't talk back a whole lot. There was an issue with that, but that unconditional love, man. Find what works for you. Find your tribe. If you don't have that relationship. Maybe you live on your own, right? So you don't have that avenue of release at home to go home and vent and talk. Then you go to the gym. You go do that at the firehouse or whatever it may be. But man, I don't ask a whole lot of people, but I ask a whole bunch of little things. And one of the things I would ask for folks is find a way to not suppress that spring, not to push that spring down, man, because it's going to pop up. Live better.
I don't think we could sum it up any better than you just did, Paul.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up this conversation and unpack it. It's going to take probably a few listenings to really go to the, get the full impact of everything we just shared with us, Paul. So I want to thank you so much for being with us, being of service, and for all that you do out there for brothers and sisters who are in need of this information and also in need of the peer support and CISM.
Sure. Well, thank you guys, and thank you for what you do. I mean, thank you for, this mechanism. I mean, a podcast 30 years ago, this stuff wasn't around. We weren't reaching, hundreds or thousands of people at a shot. Right. And now when you look at how many podcasts there are, how many programs there are on peer support, wellness, stress, I mean, it's incredible. It gives you hope. It gives you hope that maybe someday, maybe not as many folks are going to suffer for some of the stuff that a lot of us have. Right. But thank you guys for what you do and what you're doing.
It's a pleasure, as you well know.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, please like and subscribe. We're on YouTube, Responder Resilience, Facebook, Responder Wellness Inc., and Responder TV, bbsradio.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the podcast platforms. Go to our website for past episodes and guest information. It's respondertv.com. Until the next time, stay safe, be kind to yourself, take care.